Welcome back guys. Lossless scaling frame generation is now available on Linux platform in the form of an unofficial port called LSFG-VK developed by the developer Pancake TS. The objective of this project is to port lossless scaling frame generation to native Vulkan. In this video I'll be showing you how to use LSFG on Steam Deck running on Linux based SteamOS. First things first, you need to own the lossless scaling application. It sells on Steam Store for around $7 US. This is SteamOS running in desktop mode. I have already purchased the application, installed it on my Steam Deck. Don't need to run it, it's not going to work. Just go to LSFG-VK GitHub page. I'll give its link in the description. Right now this project is in a very early development stage. Frame generation smoothing effect works properly only in a few games. They need to address the frame pacing issues. The project does not support any of lossless scaling subscaling algorithms. Only supports a few frame generation settings from the original app, like 2x, 3x, 4x multiplier mode, performance mode. Flowscale setting is also available. I'll explain these settings in the later part of the video. No graphical user interface is available for the purpose of installing LSFG-VK. Can't even change its setting via a GUI. Need to do everything manually. I'll be covering all of this stuff in the video. Now there is another way of installing LSFG-VK. It can be installed via Decky loader. The developer who released Decky FrameGen plugin released a script for installing LSFG-VK, but this script has run into some controversies. LSFG-VK developer shared this post. LSFG-VK Decky plugin was not developed with their consent. They won't be offering any help to people who are using LSFG-VK via this Decky plugin. Things may change in the future. The developers may collaborate with each other. YouTube content creator Deck Wizard showed the setup process for LSFG-VK via this Decky plugin. Developer Pancake did not agree with their settings. They do not recommend using them. I'll just follow the setup process recommended by the developer Pancake. Copy this line of text. Click on the icon next to it right here. Click on SteamOS icon. Now just search for console. KO. There it is. Terminal. Launch it. Paste the line here, right click, paste, hit enter. Make sure your Steam Deck is connected to the internet. Which version would you like to install? It's the first option for our Steam Deck. It's even mentioned here, Arch Linux. Type 1, hit enter. Are you sure you want to install LSFG-VK? Type Y, hit enter. LSFG-VK for Arch Linux has been installed. Close the terminal. Pancake has provided a Discord link on their GitHub page. If you are encountering any problems while using LSFG-VK, you can always ask for help on their Discord server. But just to be clear, do not use LSFG-VK via Decky plugin, otherwise you will get ignored. There are a few things about frame generation that you need to know before using LSFG. A minimum of 60 FPS is recommended for using any frame generation technique in order to keep the latency and graphical artifacts in check. The concept is simple: higher the base FPS, lower the latency. Same thing goes for the graphical artifacts. If the base FPS is 60 or anything higher than that, minimal graphical artifacts will be produced. Now this does not mean that you cannot use LSFG at lower frame rate values like 30 to 40. It's just that when the FPS is close to 30, very ugly latency will be produced and some noticeable graphical artifacts will also be produced. Graphical artifacts intensity will vary from game to game. From my own personal experience, on a low-end hardware like Steam Deck, you should be targeting a minimum of 40 to 45 as the base FPS range for using frame generation. This is when you are playing the games using a gamepad. LSFG comes with a GPU overhead. You need to have some GPU headroom for its proper functioning. If a game is already hitting the GPU bottleneck and then you enable LSFG, it's going to tank the base FPS, the base performance. For example, let's say your base FPS is 30 and the game is hitting the GPU bottleneck. When you enable LSFG, it's going to drop the base FPS to around 25 and then use the freed up GPU resources for its functioning. For improving latency, LSFG developer recommends capping the base FPS to a value which is half of your display's max refresh rate value. If the base FPS exceeds half of the display's max refresh rate value, for example, I have the LCD variant of Steam Deck. Its display supports up to 60 Hz. If my base FPS is within a range of 35 to 40, it's better to just cap the FPS at 30. Then you can use the 2x multiplier mode of LSFG. It will try to double the FPS from 30 to 60. 2 times multiply mode gives the best looking image quality compared to the higher modes. Higher modes are not recommended for low end devices, especially the displays that supports up to 60Hz refresh rate. Now OLED variant of Steam Deck supports up to 90Hz refresh rate. Here on that device you can use LSFG's 3 time multiply mode. Just cap the base FPS to 30 when you enable the 3 time multiply mode. If Steam Deck OLED has enough GPU resources, LSFG will try to triple the FPS to 90. Switch to SteamOS gaming mode. I'll be demonstrating LSFG in GTA 5 Enhanced. Now I'll show you how to enable LSFG settings for any game. Also explain the settings. Just open the game's Steam settings. Click on the settings cog below the game's box art. Click on properties. Click on general. Under launch options we need to add the following environment variables. I'll explain them. First we have enable underscore LSFG equal to 1. Self-explanatory. This setting enables LSFG. Next we have LSFG underscore multiply equal to 2. This will enable the 2 times multiply mode of LSFG. LSFG will try to double the FPS. If you set the value to 3, it will try to triple the FPS, but this will increase the graphical artifacts and the latency. And if you set the value to 4, LSFG will try to quadruple the FPS. For example, FPS will increase from 30 to 120 if your device has enough free GPU resources. At lower base FPS values, latency will be a big problem. Next we have LSFG underscore flow underscore scale equal to 1. Value ranges from 0 to 1.0. This setting basically dictates the amount of information available to LSFG for the purpose of motion estimation. Useful when you are running games at higher resolutions. For example, if you are playing the game at 1440p resolution, it's recommended to set the value to 0.75. This way, the input frames will be processed at full HD resolution and the output frames will be generated at 1440p resolution. Steam Deck runs games at 800p resolution. I really don't like using the Flowscale setting. Instead of using this setting, I prefer using LSFG's performance mode. I'll cover that as well. The main thing that you need to know about Flowscale setting is that at lower values, LSFG's performance will improve at the cost of image quality. Minimal graphical artifacts will be produced when you set the Flowscale value to 1.0. And next we have Mesa underscore VK underscore WSI underscore present underscore mode equal to immediate. This is the environment variable. This variable allows for images to be presented immediately but at the risk of visible screen tearing. Enables the immediate mode, as simple as that. Next we have LSFG underscore PERF underscore mode equal to 1. Yeah, this enables LSFG's performance mode. If you are using a lower value for Flowscale, then don't use LSFG's performance mode. Otherwise, image quality is going to suffer. You will observe a lot of graphical artifacts. At the end, just add command percentage to activate these environment variables. First, I'll run GTA 5 without LSFG. Just remove all of the environment variables using Gproton version 10-9 as the compatibility layer. We are in performance QM settings. Disable SteamOS FreeSync by enabling disable frame limit and allow tearing settings. This will uncap the FPS. Holy level set to 3. And that's it. In-game settings. Make sure the display mode is set to either Windows or borderless full screen. 800p resolution. I have applied a 30 FPS cap. We'll use LSFG to double the FPS. In-game VSync off. Do not use FSR 3 upscaler on Steam Deck, otherwise the game will crash at startup in SteamOS gaming mode. Anti-aliasing TA. I'm using the high settings. Post effects normal. Slider set to 50%. Extended distance scaling 30%. Here we are in. I am standing right outside Franklin's house. FPS here is locked at 30. Animation quality is looking a bit choppy. Check out the real world input delay. We are not hitting the GPU bottleneck. This is exactly what I wanted. GPU load is within a range of 70 to 80. So we have some GPU headroom available for the proper functioning of LSFG. It will be interesting to see how it works. Let's enable it. I have added the environment variables. Multiply mode set to 2 times. Flowscale value set to 1 for the best looking image quality. Immediate mode on. Run the game without LSFG's performance mode. Removed its variable. Normal model of LSFG, which is heavier on the GPU. Then the performance mode. Lost the game. We are in. It's very easy to verify that LSFG is working. Just observe the thick frame pacing graph. But what's going on here? Animation quality is looking so choppy. No improvement in performance. Now Deck's APU can draw up to 15 watts of power. If the CPU draws too much power, GPU's performance will tank, and vice versa. Look at the power draw for CPU 2 watts. GPU's clock speed is locked at 1600 MHz, hitting the GPU bottleneck. Normal mode of LSFG is very heavy on the GPU. I'll just enable manual GPU clock speed setting. Value set to 1400 MHz. Okay, this did not help. This sometimes helps in improving the performance with FSR frame generation enabled. Okay, now I'll test LSFG's performance mode. Add the environment variable of performance mode, LSFG underscore PERF underscore mode equal to 1. This mode is lighter than the normal mode, recommended for lower end GPUs. Improves LSFG's performance at the cost of image quality. Space percentage command percentage. Yeah, we are in. This is the game running with LSFG's performance mode. FPS increased to around 60. I think this mode is working properly, but I'm not observing any added amount of smoothness. Spinning the camera around, Franklin's head is flickering occasionally. GPU clock speed, it's on the lower side. Okay, CPU is drawing almost 8.5 watts of power. I'll just enable manual GPU clock speed setting from performance QM settings. Set the value to 1400 MHz. Yeah, check out the added amount of smoothness. Now it's working properly. Graphical artifacts, they have become more aggressive. Look at Franklin's character model flickering aggressively. This is the problem when the base FPS is on the lower side, close to 30. Okay, smoothing effect seems to be inconsistent. It's not working now. See, animation quality is looking choppy. I observed this behavior in many games. It's a war between the CPU and the GPU for the power. Okay, I'll just change the clock speed to 1600 MHz. Yeah, fluidity is back again. Smoothing effect working properly. Latency, it's manageable. Just enable auto aim from the in-game settings, but look at those graphical artifacts. Now I'll test the Flowscale value. I'll just change its value from 1.0 to 0.5. This should help in improving the performance, but will cause some graphical artifact. Disable the game's performance mode. Beg your pardon, LSFG's performance mode. Just remove this environment variable, LSFG underscore performance underscore mode. There you go. We are in. Animation quality is looking a bit choppy. FPS 60 doesn't feel like the real 60 FPS. I'll enable manual GPU clock speed settings. Speed set to 1400 MHz. Yeah, there's the smoothing effect. Got disabled again. So better to just use the performance mode of LSFG. Smoothing effect is very inconsistent on Steam Deck. What's going on? 1600 MHz value. Still not working. I'll test God of War 2018 now. First I'll show you the base performance. Cap the FPS at 30 using G Proton version 10-9 as the compatibility layer. In-game settings, display mode set to borderless. VSync off. FPS limit 30. Motion blur frame rate disabled. FSR2 enable using its balance preset. Graphics preset set to original. Performance game settings, disable SteamOS VSync by enabling disable frame limit and allow tearing settings. There's Kratos, my current location, shows of 9. Here FPS is locked at 30. Almost hitting the GPU bottleneck. 90% GPU load, so we have some GPU headroom available for LSFG. Let's enable it. First I'll test its normal mode. 90% GPU load. Environment variables added. Multiply mode 2 times. Flowscale value 1. Immediate mode on. Performance mode disabled. Look at the same sequence here. FPS increased to around 40. Look at that thick frame pacing graph. LSFG is working. Latency increased. Can experience it, but not impressed with the added amount of smoothness. Game was running better when I had LSFG disabled. GPU clock speed 1600 MHz. Normal mode is very heavy on the GPU. I'll switch to the performance mode. You should be getting better results in less demanding games. I'll cover more games in another video. Okay, add the environment variable for performance mode. LSFG underscore PERF underscore mode equals to 1 space. That's it. Here we are in. I'll enable manual GPU clock speed setting. Value set to 1400 MHz. Let's check out the performance. Yeah, FPS increased to around 60. Not bad. Latency is manageable. Smoothing experience is decent. It's definitely usable. Looking better than the game running at 30 FPS. Sprinting around. Stable performance. Observe some flickering around Kratos. Yeah, his head is flickering. See, when I spin the camera around, doing fast visual motion. Occasional graphical artifacts can occur. Let's test LSFG's 3-time multiplier. Set LSFG multiplier environment variable to 3 using LSFG's performance mode. Manual GPU clock speed setting on, speed set to 1400 MHz. Observe the FPS counter, 90 FPS. Wow, look at the added amount of smoothness. 3 times multiply mode is definitely working. Oh my god, look at the graphical artifacts. Just observe Kratos character model when I spin the camera. Flickering so aggressively, and I'm observing some garbled textures around the left and right edges of the display. It's expected. Base FPS is close to 30, even less than that. After enabling LSFG, increased to 90 FPS. LSFG added a lot of interpolated frames. These frames are causing these graphical artifacts. Latency increased. It's definitely noticeable. Kratos blade is also flickering. Yeah, I would not recommend using this mode on Steam Deck. Look at the crosshair, it's flickering. Some ghosting is produced around it. Test another game, Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Using the low graphics preset, XeSS upscaler set to balance. Everything set to low. 800p resolution, display mode borderless window. FPS capped to 30, that's it. Performance game settings, SteamOS basic disabled by enabling disable frame limit and allow tearing settings. OLED level set to 3. There's Garrett standing outside the city of Novigrad. FPS here is locked at 30. Here GPU load, it's close to 85%, 85 to 90. So we have some GPU headroom available for LSFG. Animation quality. Not observing any graphical artifacts. I haven't enabled LSFG yet. Let's enable it. First I'll run the game without LSFG's performance mode. Immediate mode enable. Flowscale value set to 1. Multiplier value set to 2. Here we are in. Look at that thick frame pacing graph. LSFG is working, and oh my god, look at that increase in latency. Noticeable delay. This model is very heavy on the GPU, as you can see. Hitting the GPU bottleneck. Clock speed maxed out 1600 MHz. CPU is drawing only 2.5 watts of power. Okay, I'll switch to LSFG's performance mode. Not observing any artifacts around Geralt's character model. That's good to see. Multiply mode set to 2. Flowscale value set to 1. LSFG's performance mode enabled. Manual GPU clock speed setting on, speed set to 1600 MHz, and yeah, I can observe that amount of smoothness, getting 60 FPS. But look at those graphical artifacts. See, this is the problem. Geralt's character model is flickering, swords are flickering. This is the performance mode of LSFG. This mode works properly on Steam Deck. Base FPS here is 30, so I'm not surprised that such ugly graphical artifacts are produced. Okay, I'll just remove the 30 FPS cap. Display settings, FPS cap set to unlimited. Back to the game. The FPS increased to around 80. I'm still observing some graphical artifacts. Geralt's swords, they are flickering. What's going on with the FPS value? It's so variable. Yeah, LSFG is a bit buggy in its current state on Linux. Time to conclude the video. So lossless scaling frame generation does work on Steam Deck now with SteamOS, but its normal mode is very heavy for Steam Deck's GPU. In most of the AAA games, it caused a performance regression. Games were running better without LSFG enabled. Normal mode may perform better in indie titles, less demanding games, but it's highly likely that these games will already be running at 60 FPS on Steam Deck without frame generation. On the other hand, LSFG's performance mode worked properly, increased the FPS from 30 to 60, but in some cases, the smoothing effect was a bit inconsistent. Even with an FPS count of 60, animation quality was looking a bit choppy. This may be due to Steam Deck's APU, which has a power limit of 15 watts, shared between CPU and the GPU. Sometimes CPU draws too much power, tanking the GPU performance and vice versa. Even the 3x multiplier mode worked on Steam Deck, but going from 30 to 90 FPS added a lot of graphical artifacts, increased the latency considerably. I'll be honest, latency was manageable in 2x multiplier mode, going from 30 to 60 FPS when playing games using a gamepad. Highly recommended to enable auto aiming from the in-game settings. It's good to have LSFG on Steam Deck Linux platform, but the project is in very early development phase right now. Better to wait for the developer to optimize it. That's it with the video, guys. I hope you find it useful. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.